Welcome back, everybody. So today I thought I'd do a quick video on taming your carbine link gas system. There's been quite a few things along the way to help solve the issues running a carbine length gas system. And we know now today that kind of moving that forward and going to a mid-length solved a lot of issues with gassing, but I have a couple of pretty effective ways to kind of tackle that issue. So if you're like me and you like to run the kind of GWatt era stuff, right, the quad rails and kind of a setup like this, you know that most of those run the carbine flake gas system. So there's been a number of companies along the way that's tried to tame the gas system on like the 14.5, right? Companies like LMT that went in and did some redesigning of the bolt carrier itself to change the timing and the unlock of that a little bit. But that was specifically for the A2 front sight post and the carbine flank gas system, because they couldn't go in and switch everything out, right? Thousands of rifles. They just needed sort of a plug and play option to kind of, you know, fix that issue. So if you're unaware, what are some of the issues that you do run into running a carbine flank gas system on a rifle like this? So essentially it's over gas. Right from the get-go, a 14.5 is kind of right on that borderline, right, of being over gas. This is a 16-inch rifle, and a 16-inch without a can on it is for sure over gas. Like right from the start, if you're running all kind of mil-spec parts, you'll notice your brass will probably be coming out somewhere maybe here to forward a little bit. And then when you put a can on, it's absolutely for sure over gas. Most of your brass, if you just haven't done anything to it, will be ejecting out of the rifle, you know, in a pattern like this. And that's telling you you got too much gas running through the rifle, and all your parts back here are going way too fast. Is what happens is when the bolt comes back, the shell casing bounces off the deflector here and bounces forward instead of coming back in a nice pattern like that. Some of the things that you're going to solve by getting this thing to run right? Like less recoil, less felt recoil. Your parts are going to wear and tear much slower, and there's not going to be so much soot in your upper, your lower receiver, and down in your mag, because all that gas and stuff goes down into the magazine as well. Okay, so I have a couple of pretty effective options we have to try and solve this, try and mitigate some of that gas coming back into the rifle, or what we can do with it if it does. So my first setup here, this is my old build. I ended up shooting the barrel out of it. It needs a barrel replacement, and it's got thousands of rounds through it. And during those thousands of rounds that were spent, and the bolt carrier I was using to shoot that was the Bootleg bolt carrier group. Essentially, this is a 4-position gas adjustment right here on the bolt carrier. The cool thing about this is something you can drop right into the rifle, right? If you don't want to go and change anything around or start messing with different things like that, we could take this whole bolt carrier, it comes just like this, we drop it right in there, and we can start from there and essentially try to get the rifle to run properly, or at least closer than we were before. We're using one of the 4-position gas adjustments that we have on here. Now, these rifles were originally designed to just run an H1 buffer. Once we get this adjusted and it's still too much, then we can potentially make some adjustments back here, springs and buffers like that. I definitely recommend tackling the gas itself first before we go to buffers and springs and things like that, right? What I ended up running on this, and it worked really well, is just it was the Geisley H2 buffer, right? And they have the double wound spring. That's a really nice setup, and I ran it with this guy here. So with this setup here, I would run it just on the suppress setting, and we'll kind of go over how some of that stuff works. And it ran really well until, you know, we shot the barrel up basically. But like I was saying, the cool thing about that is we can just drop it in, start from there, and then start building out. So this bolt carrier group is just like any other typical mil-spec bolt carrier that you might find. The overall profile and shape of it is kind of exactly the same. The main difference that you're going to find here is there a 4-position gas adjustment built right into the bolt carrier. We have suppressed, we have like a suppressed plus, an unsuppressed, and then all the way to unsuppressed, which is supposed to be like, essentially supposed to be like the factory bolt carrier. And the way this thing works, so we have the gas that enters here, right? And as it starts to pressurize, the bolt starts to move back a little bit, and depending on where you have this set to, will determine how much gas comes out here. This is a separate vent that you don't normally see, and it starts to bleed some of that off. After that, you can maybe see the gas rings running past these. These secondary holes are like what you typically see on any other bolt carrier. What we have on the inside here, let me pop that loose real quick. Looking on the back side here, you can see after I've turned it, we have this sort of machine metal kind of tang that sticks out. Once it goes past that slot that's been cut into there, we can actually go in and pop that thing out like we did here. And this is essentially what you have, and this is essentially what you have on the inside, right? So the benefit of this, the nice thing about this, is the whole thing is very simple. This has never moved or come loose or anything like that. It stays in there pretty tight, and as you can see, like I was saying, it's just a really simple part to make this whole thing kind of work. And then getting back in there, we just pop that back in, and you can turn it from either side, but there's kind of a, like I was saying, there's kind of a groove cut right in the back side of there. And, you know, essentially that's how it worked. This would be all the way unsuppressed, and that would be all the way suppressed. There's a machine kind of arrow on the part that rotates there. The machine work on here, as you can kind of see, is very well done. This thing has thousands of rounds through it, and it's just now starting to see a typical wear where the hammer runs on, and then a little bit up here on the cam pin and on the top there, but not bad at all, right? This thing is really well made. So after I shot the barrel out of this guy, I decided to go in and actually rebuild a whole new rifle. This is my new setup right here. Right, we went with the new upper, lower, handguards, barrel, everything. And while I was doing that, I wanted to completely tackle the gas system altogether. I wanted to change it up so I wasn't running any kind of bolt carrier or messing with springs or anything like that. But I went right to the source, and this here is the JP A2 adjustable front sight post. We can adjust the gas on that. So there's two screws with this that basically allow this thing to kind of work. One right here on the side, we have an adjustment screw, and that adjusts how much gas is going up into the gas tube. Our second screw here comes in through the front, and that tightens against the gas adjustment screw. So the JP is mounted to your barrel by two oversized bolts that run on the bottom side. There's a really effective clamping system that goes around your barrel. And if you want to, you can also pin it. It comes with a small pin that's going to need to be drilled out both on the gas block and through your new barrel, but it does come with a pin if you do want to do that. And once you get the thing mounted, it's pretty much on there. It's a very well made and well produced front sight post, much better than the mil spec one, right? Like right when you take this thing out of the box and start looking at it, you can see how well this thing is made and how well it's machined. It does fit the 0.750 inch diameter barrel. So if you're running kind of that mil spec diameter barrel, that's what it's for. And yeah, it just kind of slides right on there. So one of the things you might ask too, and one of the things you might wonder is how do I get this thing aligned straight, right? So what we want to do is we want to set the rifle up, and we're going to use a level on both the front sight post here and your back rail, assuming this is all set up and torqued down and everything's done correctly. And we're going to want to align with a level going across the top of here and here. Once you get that set up right, then we're going to tighten it down, right, and then check it again. And if those two are level together, you should be good to go. So the installation of this thing is actually pretty easy overall, right? So one of the main concerns I had with this setup, I've never really run anything quite like it before, is the screws that are on here are very small, the gas adjustment and the locking screw. And my concern was these things were going to back out over time, right? Between the heat, vibration, stuff like that, they were going to end up just kind of losing its zero, so to speak. So what actually ended up happening is I used blue Loctite on both, and then I went out to the range and we got the gas tuned in properly. We're basically just creeping it back, and we're going to see if it's going to lock back this time. And we did get locked back, so we're about 2.5 out. after going out to the range a number of times, is what ended up really actually happening was both the front sight post and the screws itself basically get carbon locked on, just like a lot of other accessories and things that we see have happened to. I did need to make an adjustment to this later on, and what I noticed was you could turn them, but they were not going anywhere. So that was really nice to see. So, you know, to answer the question, is this thing reliable and being able to kind of stay together? Absolutely, definitely. The blue Loctite worked really well, and yeah, just shooting it and letting it carbon lock on also did the job as well. One of the things that come up is during the installation of it is how far back can I put this, right? We all know that the traditional Knight's Armament, quad rail, things of that design have a plate that goes in between the rail itself and the front sight post, leaving a slight gap in between those two. And the question is, can I move this front sight post all the way back, or do I need to leave a gap? You know, how should I go about installing that? The answer is you can do either or. It's not picky. The hole that's drilled on the bottom side of the gas block is much larger. It's probably 70% larger than your gas port on the barrel. So you have some wiggle room between manufacturers and, you know, the setup that you need to do to get that lined up. After I set this thing up, I put a bore scope down there, looked up in there, and I didn't see any metal running across, right? So it was good to go. And of course, the rifle's been running very well ever since then, so that does work. So one side tip about tuning this in is take note of your weather conditions. So when I tuned this thing in, it was in the heat of the summer down here in Texas. It was 90, 95 degrees every day, right? And we got this thing tuned in just perfectly. Always locked back, everything was great. As the season went on and as it cooled off, sometimes if my shoulder wasn't perfectly locked in there and the rifle was able to recoil a little bit more, I get failure to lock back on here once in a while. Not every time, but sometimes. And that was basically due to I had it tuned right on that very edge, right? And as soon as the weather conditions changed, it was just enough to not basically allow the rifle to lock back. So that's when I gave it another quarter turn, which is what we have it at right now. And it's spot on, it's perfect. So, you know, if you're tuning it in the hot weather, go ahead and give it another quarter turn just for those cool weather conditions. If you're tuning it in cool weather, 30, 40 degrees out, things like that, you know, you can make adjustments accordingly, and you should be in, you know, pretty good shape. So one of the things that you'll notice if you start tuning this in is how fine tunable you can get it. So every even eighth turn, you can potentially notice a subtle difference in the way, the direction your brass is moving, right? And that's a pretty good indication of that there is adjustments being made, and you know, you can basically tune the rifle in there. So as you can see, this thing pretty much runs spot on. Perfect ejection pattern, locks back, totally reliable, and the recoil is nice and soft. I pretty much have nothing but good things to say about this JP adjustable gas block. You know, if you are running a rifle like this and you kind of want to make it adjustable, or you want to build something brand new and switch up from the traditional, you know, mil-spec A2, I highly recommend running this and getting it set up. One side tip, if you are kind of going to go in and do this yourself, and maybe upgrade your current rifle. One thing to take note too, so getting the A2 front sight post off can be somewhat tricky, but you know, if you know how to do it, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty easy. But if you grab your rifle at home and you look on the bottom side of this where the pins are, you'll notice one side is thicker than the other. You're going to want to drive the pins out from the thin side out, right? So we don't want to be hammering the thick side of those pins through a smaller hole. They're actually slightly tapered. And so once you get these, you know, basically get it set up on a vise or a rest, and we're going to tap those out. They should come, you know, fairly easily. Once we get that off, then you can slide that off. If you do already have the holes drilled in your existing barrel, can you run the JP one over those? Yes, you can. It works just fine. This barrel here is not drilled for the taper pin holes because I was planning on installing that, but the mounting on this gas block pretty much has nothing to do with the original setup, so one's not really going to affect the other. Once again, if installing the JP is a bit too much and you just kind of want to do something to tune that gas up a little bit, the Bootleg bolt carrier group, I can definitely recommend that. This thing's been great. And the only reason I pretty much quit running it is, once again, you know, it's pretty much best to adjust this gas right up here, right at the source, and then go from there. But, you know, if you are running that and, you know, it's over gas, this is definitely a viable option. So during the time that I've been using this, I've had not even any indication of this thing turning, loosening up, rotating, or anything like that. You know, I've had this pretty hot a couple times and it just keeps on going. One of the things you could do too, if you want, just keep an eye on it, is you put paint marker pretty much on everything across the rifle. On the sights, you know, sight adjustments, things like that. And you can do the same thing to the bottom of these bolts. Once you get it all set up, just run a white paint marker across it and keep an eye on it. If those bolts do start to back off, you're gonna be able to see that. But I have had no issues at all. I also use sort of a side tip. I did use red Loctite on these too, right? Once we get that set, we pretty much never want to take it off through the entire life of the barrel. I mean, eventually you can get it off if you really need to, but red Loctite, green sleeve retainer. I'm running green sleeve retainer between the front sight post and the barrel. Once that sets up, that in and of itself is pretty secure on the barrel. Had no issues with that either. So once you get this installed, a couple of tips of just kind of getting this tuned in is you're going to want to go and adjust the side gas adjustment screw first. And we'll go ahead and bottom it out. You don't want to wrench it down or anything like that or tighten it. Just screw it in until it's bottomed out, and we'll call that 0. From there, we'll back it out about 2.5 turns. That's how I started out on this. And then we're just going to go out and run the rifle. And you just kind of start adjusting from there, going maybe about a 1/4 turn each time. And that's really, with an AR-15, your brass direction is going to just about tell you everything you need to know about if it's over gas or not. Once again, what we're looking for is our brass to be coming out at that 4 o'clock position, or at most maybe the 3 o'clock straight off the side here. If you have anything more than that, we know we're going into the red zone. That's a bit too much. And then either go an 1/8 turn or a 1/4 turn at a time until you get that thing running pretty good. If you're doing it in hot weather, another little 1/4 turn and you should be good to go even in cooler weather. Aside from that, guys, that's about it. It was just a quick video today. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe and we'll see you at the next one.